What would you say if a cop looked at you and said, "I'm calling for a K-9 right now"? If you say the wrong thing, you can hand over your rights in seconds. If you say the right thing, you can protect yourself without fighting, arguing, or making things worse. Hit subscribe right now because what you're about to hear could save your freedom during your next traffic stop. And like this video now so you can find it fast when your heart is pounding and your mind goes blank. Here's what you're about to learn, and you need every part of it. You're going to hear the exact sentence that blocks easy consent. You're going to hear the question that forces the stop into a legal lane. You're going to hear the line that shuts down risky small talk. And you're going to hear the sentence you use if they search anyway. Let me show you exactly how this works in real life. Because your tone matters, your timing matters, and your silence matters. Most people have no idea how fast a normal stop turns into a drug investigation. You think it's about speeding. You think it's about your tag light. You think it's about a warning. Then suddenly you hear the word K-9, and now your whole car feels like it's on trial. That's the moment where people panic, start talking too much, or try to sound helpful. That's also the moment where they wreck their own defense. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the same mistake keeps showing up. Drivers start explaining. Drivers start joking. Drivers say, "I don't mind, go ahead." Drivers think acting nice will make the officer back off. Sometimes it does. A lot of times it does not. Here's the reality. Once you help the search happen, you make your own problem bigger. So let's set this up the right way. You still give your license. You still give your registration. You still stay calm. You keep your hands where they can be seen. You don't reach around. You don't argue on the roadside. But when you hear that K-9 line, you stop trying to win with charm. You start protecting your record with words that are clean, short, and legal. Here's the first thing you say, and you need to memorize it exactly. You look at the officer and say this: "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Word for word. Say it calmly, say it clearly, say it once or twice if needed, then stop talking. That line matters because consent is the shortcut. If you give permission, the officer does not need to fight for it later. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it draws a bright line. You did not agree. You did not open the door. You did not make it easy. Your refusal does not magically stop a search, but it protects you if they try one anyway. That is huge for your case. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I've got nothing to hide. Go ahead." Then the officer gets easy consent. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Then the officer has to rely on real legal grounds instead of your permission. Let me show you exactly why that matters with simple English. In a case called Schneckloth versus Bustamante, the Supreme Court said a voluntary yes can make a search legal. In plain words, if you agree, you make their job easier. You don't need to know the case name on the roadside. You just need to know your line. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." That one sentence can protect your future argument in court. Now here's the part that confuses people. A dog sniff around the outside is different than digging through bags. And that comes from a case called Illinois versus Cabales. In plain English, the court said a dog sniff is okay if it's quick. So your no consent line is not magic against the dog walking around outside. But it is still your shield against consent searches of your car, trunk, bags, and containers. Here's the reality. Officers often ask for consent before the dog ever gets there because your yes is faster. That is why your first job is not to outtalk them. Your first job is to close the consent door. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it changes the whole stop. Now the officer knows you know your rights, and now every next move has to stand on legal ground. Watch what happens when you do this right. The officer says he's calling a dog. You don't argue. You don't say, "That's illegal." You don't say, "Why are you targeting me?" You say one clean line: "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." That tells the camera, the court, and everyone listening exactly where you stand. This is 100% legal, and it is one of your strongest moves. Have you ever been asked for consent during a stop? Drop a comment below. I want to know what you said and whether you knew this line before today. Now let's get to the second line, and this one is the pressure point. After the ticket business is done, or after the officer starts delaying for the dog, you ask this: "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Those exact words. Keep your voice calm. Keep your body still. Do not drive off unless the officer clearly tells you that you are free to go. This question matters because it forces the moment into focus. The stop cannot last forever. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. In Rodriguez versus United States, the court said something important. Police cannot stretch a completed traffic stop just to wait for a dog unless they have more legal reason. This is called reasonable suspicion. That just means real facts pointing to crime, not a hunch. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Why are you doing this to me?" Then the stop turns into a long roadside argument. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Then the officer has to either let you go or own the fact that you are still being held. That question is powerful because it does three things at once. First, it shows you are not agreeing to extra delay. Second, it makes the timeline clear on body cam. Third, it can expose when the fishing part has started. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection once the original reason for the stop is done. Timing is everything here. Watch what happens when you ask it the right way. If the officer says you are free to go, then you leave calmly. If the officer says you're detained, now the record shows it. That matters later. If the officer dodges the question, you can ask again once, calmly. Officer, am I being detained or am I free to leave? Then stop. Let the silence work for you. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. A lot of people think they need to win a debate on the roadside. You do not. You need a clean record. You need short, controlled statements. You need the camera to show that you were calm and clear while the officer made the choices. Your goal is not to beat the dog in the parking lot. Your goal is to protect your case if things go bad. And one more safety point for you. If the officer orders you out of the car, you comply. In Pennsylvania versus Mims, the court said officers can order a driver out during a lawful stop. So do not turn your rights into a resisting charge. Step out if told. Keep your hands visible. Keep your mouth disciplined. Then go right back to your line. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? Now let's talk about the third line, because this is where people bury themselves. If the officer starts fishing with questions, you say this: I choose to remain silent and I do not answer questions. That is your line. Short, clear, repeatable. Listen closely because this is critical. Your mouth is often the real search. The dog is one thing, your words are another. People talk themselves into probable cause, which just means enough facts for police to search. You admit you were at a party. You say your friend borrowed the car. You mention old smells. Now the officer has more to work with because you gave it away for free. Bad way. Most drivers say, there's nothing in here, but my cousin used the car yesterday. Then the officer hears a story, a possible excuse, and a reason to keep digging. Good way. Smart drivers say, I choose to remain silent and I do not answer questions. Then you stop feeding the investigation with your own words. This is 100% legal. You still handle the basics like your name and license, but you do not have to chat through an investigation. The ACLU says you have the right to remain silent during police encounters. That matters because nervous people love to fill silence. Smart people let silence protect them. You're not being rude. You're being disciplined. Courts care about clear words. In Berghaus versus Tompkins, the court said people usually need to clearly say they are using the right to stay silent. So don't just sit there. Say it. I choose to remain silent and I do not answer questions. Then stay quiet. Let me show you exactly how this plays out. The officer says, why not let the dog clear it up? You do not explain. You say, I choose to remain silent and I do not answer questions. Simple wins under stress. When your pulse is racing, your brain wants a script. That is why these lines work. Most people already clicked away. If you're still here, you're in the top 10%. Drop a comment saying I'm still here. Because the next part is what protects you when the officer searches anyway. Here's your fourth line. I'm not resisting, but I do not consent to this search. You are not fighting. You are not touching anything. You are making your position clear on camera. If you stay silent during the search, the record can get fuzzy. If you argue, you make it worse. But if you say, I'm not resisting, but I do not consent, you avoid a resisting charge and preserve your objection. Bad way. Most drivers say, fine, do whatever you want, or they start physically blocking the officer. Good way. Smart drivers say, I'm not resisting, but I do not consent to this search. Now understand the dog alert issue. In Florida versus Harris, the court spoke on trained dog alerts. If the dog alerts and the court believes it, that can give police a legal reason to search. That is exactly why you keep making your position clear. You are protecting what can be challenged later. If the dog alert turns out shaky or the stop was too long, your words help your lawyer attack the search. So you have 4 lines. I do not consent to searches. Am I free to leave? I choose to remain silent. I am not resisting, but I do not consent to this search. That is your script. Short, calm, repeatable. It removes the chaos that officers use to keep you talking. Let's walk through a real scene. You get pulled over at night. The officer says you rolled a stop sign. You hand over your documents. Then the officer says, you seem nervous. I'm calling for a K-9. In the wrong version, you laugh and give consent. You explain your cousin had the car. You admit things. In the right version, you say, Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? I choose to remain silent. In the right version, the officer has to create the evidence without your help. The camera shows you were calm. Next video, I'm revealing what to say when cops claim they smell weed. Subscribe right now. Short words protect you better than long explanations. Smash the like button if this gave you a plan. Drop a comment telling me which line you're going to memorize first. Stay safe out there.